Hello, my friends. I got a request for a video about making traveler's notebook inserts, so that's what I'm gonna do. Sorry, I totally lost my mind there. So there are a couple of different ways that you can do this, and pardon my enormous hands. I'm 6 weeks away from giving birth, and I'm starting to swell a little bit. So I'm gonna show you two different ways that you can do this. One is a more fancy tools way, and one is a less fancy tools way, but they're both equally good. So what you will need, and this is going to be for the standard size refill, you're going to need paper. I buy A4 size paper just because it's easy to make an A5 slim because you fold A4 in half and then cut it. So I use A4 paper. This is Tomoe River paper in, I believe, cream color. You're going to need whatever paper you want for a cover, cut down. This is originally a 12 by 12 scrapbooking sheet. That's inches, that's imperial system. And I cut it down to, I got one side off to like 8 3/8 or so, just long enough to cover the width of the A4 paper. I think that'll be long enough. Wide enough, rather. Anyway, so the other things that you may find. So if you have access to these kinds of tools, or if you have a little more of a budget, you'll also need clips. I think everybody who loves paper has at least a couple of clips lying around, so those come in handy. So a long arm stapler is awesome. These are great, super fantastic. It's like the best $25 I ever spent. And a paper cutter of some variety. Now the more heavy duty your paper cutter is, the thicker of an insert you'll be able to create. I typically, if you have one like this, that's just like the flatbed, little blade kind, you probably don't want to put more than like 6 to 8 sheets of paper, like big sheets, because then, you won't be able to cut much more than that. This one you can fit a little more. I usually use between 10 and 12 with this. Any more than that is gonna catch, because even though this is a rotary blade, it's not like a super heavy duty thing. I'd love to get a stack cutter at some point so that I can get a perfect straight edge. Unfortunately, and I don't mean one of the guillotine ones, I mean like a real stack cutter. Unfortunately, I don't have $3,000 lying around, so not so much. But if you don't have access to those tools, or I think all in all it might cost you 50 bucks, which I found a useful investment because I use it all the time. I make 90% of the inserts I make myself. The other ones I buy from Baumkuchen, but typically that's what's going on. But if you don't have access to those tools, the other tools you can use are these. And this is an eraser. And you can use an art eraser or one of those white erasers, whatever you have, as long as it's a block and not like the squishy art eraser kind. Block eraser, and then a stapler that opens. Okay, so let's do this. So what you're gonna do, typically I like to do my folding first and then use the clips and staple, and you'll see why that happens. So I'm gonna fold my cover. It's more important to get the top and bottom edges even than it is this edge, because this edge is gonna get cut off. If you want to use a folding tool, you can, you don't have to. It's not like you're working with huge volumes here. You're not binding like a big book, so you don't need the same kind of choir flatness in the spine that you would. And then I think I'm gonna make however many sheets this is. Let's see. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I can make more than 7. Let's do 10. 8, 9, 10. 10. I feel like I'm on Sesame Street. Okay, and same diff. There have been times if you're not confident in even folding, you can totally do this one sheet at a time. And when I first made notebooks, I did fold these one sheet at a time. I didn't do that anymore, A, because I've gotten better at it, and B, because I'm super lazy. Crafty but lazy. I feel like that's my life's motto. So now you've got your cover and your innards, and you're gonna slip your innards into your cover. This is an A5 notebook, but the Traveler's Notebook is an A5 Slim, so we do need to do some cutting. But if you need an A5 for anything, you're done. You're like, all you have to do is bind it. And if you put it into like an elastic thing, you don't even have to bind it if you don't want to. Dogs, other people are allowed to exist. Knock it off. Stop that. Okay, so flip, flip, flip. Now, the next thing we're gonna do, this is gonna be the hardest part to show you, so forgive me if this takes me a second. The most important thing about binding a book, and some of you are not going to care, and some of you are going to be like me and flip out if it's not absolutely perfect, and some of you are going to fall in the middle. I try to embrace the wabi-sabi. I have spines that aren't completely centered, and it drives me less nuts than it used to, but it still is annoying. But if you spend time to get it right, you will be rewarded. So what you're going to do, whoops, that's not what I want. Make sure that these guys are lined up and inside your cover. And then what I'll typically do is try to open and flatten the spine. And this is actually hard to do because I'm not sitting down, but I don't want to sit down because there's so much of me forward right now. And I don't want you to have to look at my baby bump and my giant baby body. So this is a little harder to do vertically. But what you're going to do is kind of open this up on one end and try to match up, oh, where am I? Here we go. Try to match up the spine, like all the folds, the cover with the inside. And when you have that matched, you're gonna clip it. Doesn't matter what side. Then you're gonna do the same thing on the other side. So try to match up the creases so that they're centered and clip. All right, now, and I will do this like several times while I'm in the process of doing what I'm doing. This guy. It's important to have good light. Okay. The other thing that I did was I marked on here where the staple actually comes out. So it's not, you're not lining it up with the edge because it needs to be lined up with the actual opening, if you can see that. So on both sides, there's a little line where the actual staple comes out, and that helps me align the crease to where the staples are going to happen. So I'll pick the edge I'm going to do. I'll take the clip off because I am a weirdo like that. I don't know why I clipped it in the first place. And I'll just eyeball a straight spine. Whoa, here we go. And then I'll flatten it a little bit. And then that gets slid in here. Whoops, that's not even. Hang on, I have to do this again. See, there's a piece sticking out, so now I have to do it again. So that is like that. And then this is like, get in there, like that. Tuck those guys together as best I can. And then I'm gonna hold them so they don't slip. And then I'm going to find on the spine where I want, and I'm gonna press but not staple yet. And I'm gonna check both sides of the crease to make sure they line up with those little black lines. And then I'm gonna staple. And hopefully when you turn the book over, it's basically nestled right in the crease there. That's what you want. Then that other clip can come off and you do the same thing on the other side. Now, if you are not using a long arm stapler, if you're gonna do it this way, you basically do the same thing. So the reason you have the stapler, and I actually am gonna use the long arm stapler because it'll drive me nuts to have two different kinds of staples, but I'll show you how to do this. So if you're using something like this, you've got your spine. You're gonna lay the spine on the stapler, and this is the eraser on the stapler, on the eraser, and the eraser is to protect the surface of whatever you're stapling on. So you're going to line up the stapler with the crease, and depress it into the eraser. Now you're going to pull it out of the eraser very carefully to keep all your papers together, because you'll have papers in here. And then you'll have your two little tines of the staple sticking out. Then you just fold them down, and you can use a tool for that. I actually have a staple remover tool that I use to do that. So you would hold it and kind of bend. You don't want to, I mean, you can do it with your fingers. It's just more likely to hurt if you do it with your fingers, but you can use some kind of a hard, I prefer metal to plastic because this will scratch plastic. And it's harder to do with on only one sheet because there's no like vertical stabilizer, but you would fold it down. And it's not quite as neat. You know, it doesn't tuck the staples under the way a real stapler does, but you can still bind that way. So that's the way to do it if you don't have access to the fancier tools. Perfectly doable. I bound all my early stuff that way before I had access to these fancier tools. And then I became an adult and I got a job and learned more about notebooks and paper binding. Went on my merry crafty way. So I'm back to just eyeballing this guy with a straight seam. Pop him in here. I feel like that's not right. Something's wrong. That's annoying. I think I folded them unevenly, but whatever. It's because I'm trying to do this in a way that I don't typically. I'm trying to do it without like showing you my gross giant body in a bathrobe right now. So, line it up. And line it up. And you probably just totally saw the top of my head, didn't you? Pop it down. Checking the center. Mostly centered. Pretty good. All right, so now you've got a bound A5 notebook, but you still need it to be A5 slim. Here's what you do next. This is where having some kind of a paper cutter comes in handy, because you can measure this out with a ruler and do it with scissors, but if you really like straight lines and hate wavy ones, the scissors are just going to drive you insane. So what I have done is I took a regular traveler's notebook insert, like a real one, and I laid it down. Let me do this so you can see it. This is another one I made, but whatever. So you lay it down at the edge of where the blade will cut, where the blade will pass. And then I just marked on here where the edge was that I would need to line up any spine that I'm going to cut to this size. So I never have to measure because the cutter now is set to do it for me. So, a couple of things to keep in mind. Pulling is easier than pushing. Americans seem to love to push things. The Japanese realized long ago that pulling is a much more efficient use of energy. So I line up my A5 notebook with the, and I just marked it here so you can see it actually says TN, so I always know that that's where I need to line it up. So I move the cutter all the way over there. I line this up with the TN line and make sure that it's flush, flat to the bottom so that I get an even cut. And then I'm just gonna brace this. You can't see it. I'm bracing the end of this against my hip so it doesn't slide. And then you're just gonna cut. And this is kind of tough, so it takes some doing sometimes. There we go. These come off. And then you've got your notebook. Dun, 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 with a nice straight line, straight edge, staple binding. I don't sew my notebooks because I don't have that kind of patience, but you can do that if you'd rather do that. And that's it. So if you guys have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day and I'll see you later. Bye.